The year is 1977, Cleveland, Ohio. A bright October afternoon hums with the noise of traffic near the corner of Waterloo Road and East 156th Street. The air smells faintly of gasoline and autumn leaves. Then, without warning, the street erupts. A green Chevrolet Monte Carlo disintegrates in a flash of orange fire. Metal shreds through the air. Windows implode for half a block. When the smoke clears, all that's left is a crater, a twisted car frame, and the charred remains of one man, Danny Greene. To most Clevelanders, the name is already legend. To the FBI, he's a problem that refuses to die. And to the Italian Mafia, he's a thorn that's finally been ripped out. For years, Greene has waged war against the Cleveland mob, defying them in a city they thought they owned. They've tried to kill him before, more than a dozen times. But the Irishman always walked away. His enemies called him arrogant. His friends called him fearless. Some swore he was protected by God himself. Now, in the aftermath of the explosion, police and federal agents swarm the scene. Spectators whisper the same thing over and over. They finally got Danny Greene. But this isn't just the end of one man. It's the final act in a brutal gang war that turned Cleveland into a battlefield. Bombs in parking lots, shootouts in daylight, and betrayals that tore through every corner of the underworld. Before the smoke clears, dozens will be dead, and the city will earn a new name, Bomb City, USA. And at the center of it all stands one man who refused to bow to the Mafia, the Irishman who took on the mob and dared them to finish the job. Chapter 1. The Streets That Made Him, Cleveland, 1933. The Great Depression grips the city like a vice. Factories shut down, men line up for bread and work, and in a neighborhood called Collinwood, a boy named Danny Greene learns early that nothing comes easy. He's the son of Irish immigrants, proud, poor, and stubborn. When Danny's mother dies young, his father spirals into alcoholism, leaving the boy to fend for himself. Danny grows up in an orphanage for a time, learning discipline from Catholic nuns and defiance from the streets. In the playgrounds and alleys of Collinwood, he fights older boys, not for money, not for pride, but for respect. He's smaller than most, but he hits harder, faster, meaner. By the time he's a teenager, everyone in the neighborhood knows Danny Greene doesn't back down. He graduates high school and joins the U.S. Marine Corps. The Marines harden him further. He becomes an expert marksman, a boxer, and a natural leader. Fellow recruits remember his cold focus, that he could follow orders but preferred giving them. When he returns to Cleveland after his service, the city is still broken. The steel mills are barely running. The docks are rough, violent, and ruled by corruption. And that's where Greene finds his purpose. He takes a job as a longshoreman, moving cargo on the Lake Erie docks, and within months, he's standing out. He works harder than the others, but he also has something more, a sense of organization and a dangerous charisma. When dock supervisors skim pay or mistreat workers, Danny steps in. He fights bullies, both literal and political. Men begin to follow his lead. In the mid-1960s, the International Longshoremen's Association, Local 1317, is riddled with graft. The leadership lines its pockets while workers suffer. Greene sees opportunity. He campaigns for reform, and when persuasion doesn't work, he uses intimidation. Rivals find their cars keyed, their tires slashed, their windows shattered. Soon, Danny Greene isn't just a dock worker. He's the dock boss. Greene dresses sharply now, tailored suits, emerald rings, a gold cross around his neck. He calls himself the Celtic Warrior. He keeps pet lions, quotes Irish poetry, and donates to local kids' programs. In Collinwood, he's a folk hero. To the authorities, he's trouble. The FBI starts watching as whispers spread that Greene's union is becoming its own little empire, enforcing contracts through muscle. Investigators later describe his rise as a blend of charm and terror. When someone crosses him, Danny doesn't shout. He smiles. "We can handle this like gentlemen," he'll say. And within days, the problem disappears. Behind that grin is something darker, a readiness to use violence without hesitation. By 1964, Greene controls the docks. Union money flows through him. The men are loyal. But his success attracts attention, not just from police, but from the Cleveland Mafia, led by John Scalish and his capos. They want a piece of Greene's racket. At first, Greene tries diplomacy. He respects power, and the Italians have plenty of it. But when they demand too much, he refuses to bend. "I don't work for you," he's rumored to have said. "I work with you." To the Mafia, that's arrogance. To Greene, it's pride. Then, in 1966, the law catches up. Federal investigators expose corruption in the longshoremen's union. Kickbacks, missing dues, extortion. Greene is indicted for embezzlement and thrown out as union president. He spends time in federal custody, but walks free after cooperating slightly with investigators, though not enough to be branded a rat. Out of the union, Danny doesn't fade. He adapts. He opens a security and loan sharking business, lending cash at mob-level interest rates. He offers protection to businesses across Cleveland's east side: Irish bars, truck yards, warehouses. Those who pay stay safe. Those who don't find their doors smashed or their cars burned. But Greene's charm keeps his legend alive. He helps old women with groceries, hands out turkeys on Thanksgiving, and supports local police charities. Reporters begin calling him Cleveland's Robin Hood. At the same time, the Cleveland underworld is shifting. Scalish, the old Don, is aging. The younger mobsters, men like James White Licavoli and John Nardi, are hungry for more territory. The city's Italian, Irish, and black gangs all jockey for power. And into that volatile mix steps Danny Greene, proud, fearless, and unwilling to bow to anyone. As the 1970s dawn, Cleveland changes. The mills dim. Organized crime grows bold. And in the shadows, the first sparks of a mob war begin to glow. For Danny Greene, the streets that raised him have given him everything: power, respect, and enemies. But the same streets will soon become his battlefield. Chapter 2. The Union that Turned into a Kingdom. Cleveland's waterfront in the 1960s is a world of steel, sweat, and silence. Freighters slide through the Cuyahoga River while cranes shriek overhead. On the docks, men haul crates and coil ropes, their faces blackened by soot. Among them moves a man in a crisp shirt and tie, Danny Greene, now head of the local longshoremen's union. To outsiders, the title sounds bureaucratic. But on the waterfront, it's absolute power. Every job, every shift, every paycheck, all pass through Greene's hands. He runs the docks like a general. Workers line up for assignments each morning, and Greene stands above them on a crate calling out names. Those loyal to him get the best shifts. Those who question him don't work at all. Danny took care of his men, one former longshoreman would later say, but if you crossed him, God help you. Under Greene, discipline returns to the Union. He demands respect, punctuality, order. Marine Corps rules applied to dock labor. The chaos of the waterfront disappears. Productivity climbs. So does Greene's reputation. Reporters call him the new face of labor power. Union bosses from other cities start to notice the sharp Irishman who mixes charisma with intimidation. Greene walks the docks with his head held high, emerald ring glinting in the sunlight, a cigar in his mouth and a revolver in his car. To his men, he's half saint, half soldier. To his rivals, he's becoming dangerous. He begins hosting meetings at his home, a modest apartment filled with Irish memorabilia and boxing trophies. Greene talks about giving workers their dignity back. But behind closed doors, he also talks about control, keeping the Italians out, keeping the cops quiet, and keeping every dollar that moves through the waterfront under his watch. By 1964, Greene's union has become its own small empire. Union dues flow in by the thousands. Some go to benefits. Some vanish into untraceable accounts. A few whispers reach the ears of federal investigators. Extortion, kickbacks, missing funds. But Greene is careful. When questioned, he smiles, shows his books, and insists he's helping the little guy. His charm disarms even the most skeptical auditors. His temper handles the rest. Greene begins forging quiet alliances with truckers, small-time gamblers, and even members of Cleveland's underworld. He plays both sides, negotiating with mob-connected businessmen while refusing to take orders from them. To the Italians, especially John Scalish's Cleveland Mafia, Greene is a problem. He's Irish, independent, and defiant. 3 things they can't tolerate. Still, they don't move against him yet. The docks are profitable, and Greene keeps the money flowing. For now, peace holds. Then Greene starts to believe his own myth. He buys a better car, wears tailored suits, and begins calling himself the Irishman. He tells reporters, "I'm just a neighborhood guy who made good." He donates to churches, gives cash to dock workers' families in need, and hands out Christmas turkeys. The local press eats it up. Cleveland's poor love him. The Mafia begins to hate him. Greene's confidence shades into arrogance. When Scalish's men suggest a contribution to their operations, Greene laughs them off. He's quoted as saying, "I don't pay tribute to Italians." It's a bold statement, and a fatal one. Behind the scenes, the mob starts looking for leverage. They fund rival dock bosses, hoping to divide Greene's men. Meanwhile, the FBI and Labor Department grow interested in his finances. Greene's enemies don't need to kill him. Not yet. They can let the law do it. In 1966, federal investigators move in. Audits, subpoenas, testimonies, all point toward one man. They accuse Danny Greene of embezzling union funds and falsifying records. When agents raid his office, they find stacks of cash and a ledger full of special payments. Greene is arrested, charged, and forced out of his union post. He walks into court with his usual swagger, hair slicked back, dark suit, emerald tie pin. In front of cameras, he insists, "I'm no criminal. I'm a patriot of the working man." The trial drags on, but Greene's luck holds. The government can't prove every dollar. He avoids serious prison time but loses his union throne. To many, it's the end of his story. To Danny Greene, it's only a rebirth. Freed from union politics, he turns fully toward the streets. He begins working as an enforcer for hire, collecting debts for bookmakers and loan sharks. He partners with small-time Irish gangs, pushing into gambling and loan sharking across Cleveland's east side. Greene builds a new crew, loyal men who admire his nerve and discipline. He also makes a new friend, John Nardi, a mafia-connected labor racketeer with ambitions of his own. The 2 men share a goal: independence from the old guard of Cleveland's mafia. For a while, their partnership works. Greene provides muscle and strategy. Nardi provides underworld connections. Together, they carve out their own territory. But peace in Cleveland's underworld never lasts. When John Scalish, the long-reigning Don, dies in 1976, the delicate balance shatters. His successor, James "Jack White" Licavoli, vows to bring the city back under strict mafia control. To him, Greene and Nardi are outsiders, troublemakers who need to be eliminated. The union man who once ruled the docks has now become public enemy number 1. And in a few short years, his kingdom will burn. Not from ballots or indictments, but from car bombs echoing through the streets. Cleveland is about to explode. Chapter 3. Enemies in every shadow. By 1966, Danny Greene's rise on the Cleveland docks has made him a figure both admired and feared. He is no longer just the union boss who balances intimidation with charity. He has become a symbol of Irish independence, a man who refuses to bow to anyone, least of all the Italian Mafia. But power draws enemies. The federal government, long suspicious of union corruption, begins to tighten its grip. Audits, subpoenas, and investigations pile up. Greene is forced out of the International Longshoremen's Association, Local 13017, his union throne stripped from him. For many, this might have marked the end of a man's influence. Not for Danny Greene. Freed from official duties, Greene turns his attention to the streets, to the underworld itself. He begins running protection and extortion rackets, offering security to bars, small businesses, and warehouses across Cleveland's east side. Payment ensures safety. Refusal brings consequences. smashed windows, burned doors, and menacing warnings. His crews are loyal and well-trained, recruited from both Irish and black neighborhoods. Greene understands the importance of alliances, and he surrounds himself with men who are fearless, disciplined, and utterly devoted. Among them is John Nardi, a clever, ambitious mob-connected labor racketeer. Nardi and Greene form a partnership based on mutual respect, a blend of muscle and street smarts. But it's a fragile alliance. Differences in ambition, temperament, and loyalties make tension inevitable. While they share enemies, they also compete for territory, influence, and control of the rackets that generate serious money in Cleveland. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Mafia, led by the calculating James "Jack White" Licavoli, takes notice of Greene's audacity. Licavoli, a successor to the aging Scalish, is intent on consolidating Italian dominance over the city's criminal enterprises. Greene's growing independent network is a direct threat to Licavoli's control over gambling, loan sharking, and unions. To the Mafia, Greene is not just a rival, he is a challenge that cannot be ignored. Tensions rise as Greene's crews begin encroaching on Mafia territories. Licavoli orders his capos to monitor Greene closely, and a series of confrontations begins. Threats are exchanged, and Greene responds in kind, asserting that he answers to no one. He refuses to pay tribute or yield turf. His confidence, bordering on arrogance, makes him both a legend on the streets and a target behind closed doors. Alliances shift as Greene recruits smaller Irish and black gangs, creating a coalition that rivals the Mafia in reach and muscle. This network allows him to operate openly, moving cash, enforcing debts, and intimidating rivals with impunity. Greene is careful, however. He avoids unnecessary exposure, knowing that the FBI and Cleveland law enforcement are watching. He plays a high-stakes game, a public persona of generosity and toughness, while maintaining a shadow empire of coercion and strategy. Yet the seeds of war are already planted. Every confrontation, every refusal to comply, every alliance with independent gangs signals to Licavoli that Greene will not be controlled. The Mafia begins making plans to eliminate the Irishman, but Greene's unpredictability and reputation for survival make assassination attempts complicated. Meanwhile, federal investigations continue, creating additional pressure and risk. The city grows tense. Rumors of bombings, shootings, and retaliations begin circulating in the neighborhoods. Business owners whisper about Greene's protection fees, the Mafia's extortion demands, and the brewing conflict between the two powers. Residents of Cleveland's East Side sense that something violent is on the horizon, though few can imagine the scale that is coming. As Greene consolidates his control, he also tightens his security. Safe houses, armored cars, and trusted lieutenants become essential. Every move is calculated. Every ally is vetted. He understands that one mistake could end his life. By the end of the decade, the groundwork for the Cleveland mob war is complete. Greene and Nardi stand as the primary Irish-American challenge to Licavoli's Mafia empire. Small confrontations, subtle threats, and skirmishes escalate the tension. Violence is inevitable. The streets of Cleveland, once bustling with dock workers and commerce, are now a chessboard of allegiances and danger. Greene's defiance has made him a symbol of independence, a hero to some, a menace to others. And the Italian Mafia, humiliated and frustrated by their inability to control him, begins preparing for the conflict that will soon erupt in fire, metal, and blood. Danny Greene has survived federal scrutiny, union politics, and early Mafia threats. But the enemies in every shadow are closing in, and Cleveland's underworld is about to explode. Chapter 4. Bomb City, USA. Cleveland, 1976. The city is tense. Streets that once echoed with the clang of cargo cranes now vibrate with a different sound, the hum of fear. The Irishman, Danny Greene, stands at the center of a storm he helped create. The Mafia, led by James "Jack White" Licavoli, is ready to reclaim control. Greene and his allies, including John Nardi, refuse to bend. The stage is set for war. It begins quietly. Windows are shattered, cars are slashed, and threats are whispered in the night. Then, the bombs start. A car explodes outside a local bar. Greene's men, ever vigilant, pull bodies from the wreckage. The message is clear. The Mafia will not tolerate defiance. Greene responds with his own show of force: sabotage of rivals' businesses, intimidation, and strategic violence that proves he will not yield. The streets of Cleveland erupt into what reporters soon call Bomb City, USA. Over the course of a single year, more than 30 car bombs detonate across the city. Cars belonging to mobsters, Greene's associates, and even innocent bystanders are transformed into twisted metal. Neighborhoods live in fear. Parents keep children inside. The media covers every explosion, broadcasting the chaos nationwide. The conflict is not random. Greene and Nardi carefully plan strikes to send messages. Licavoli's faction retaliates with equal brutality. Every bombing, every attack is a calculated move in a deadly game of chess. The city itself becomes the board. Federal agents and Cleveland police scramble to respond. A special task force is formed. Surveillance increases. Wiretaps are installed. Agents infiltrate both Irish and Italian crews. Yet Greene remains elusive. His knowledge of the docks, his alliances with smaller gangs, and his network of loyal men make him nearly untouchable. To the public, Greene is both terrifying and magnetic. Local residents whisper about his generosity, gifts to families, charity donations, while also noting his ruthless efficiency. Newspapers portray him as a folk hero, the man who stands up to the Mafia, fights for the little guy, and refuses to be intimidated. Licavoli's men grow frustrated. Plans to eliminate Greene fail again and again. Bombs are discovered before detonation. Assassins are intercepted. Greene survives. Each escape, cementing his legend. But each failed attempt raises the stakes. Retaliation escalates. The Mafia steps up recruitment of experienced hitmen. Greene strengthens security and fortifies safe houses. Both sides learn to expect betrayal, ambush, and surprise. The war reshapes Cleveland's criminal landscape. Independent gangs, previously neutral, are forced to choose sides. Some join Greene for protection, others align with Licavoli for loyalty or fear. The ethnic divide, Irish versus Italian, becomes a dominant theme, but alliances cross lines when convenience demands. Throughout it all, Greene's personality dominates. He is fearless, flamboyant, and eccentric. He wears tailored suits, drives armored cars, and jokes with reporters while city blocks burn. Yet beneath the bravado, he meticulously plans every move, knowing that a single mistake could end him. By the end of 1976, Cleveland has changed. Neighborhoods that once slept peacefully now awaken to sirens and smoke. Families barricade their homes, and every newscast seems to ask the same question: who will survive the next explosion? For Greene, survival is both a skill and a statement. Each bomb he survives reinforces his reputation. The man who cannot be intimidated, the Irishman who defied the Mafia, and the strategist who turned a personal vendetta into a citywide conflict. The Irishman has become larger than life, but the Mafia is relentless. Each failure increases their determination. And the next year will bring escalations that neither Cleveland nor Greene himself could have imagined. The streets have become a battlefield, and Danny Greene is at the heart of it, unyielding, unpredictable, and unstoppable. Chapter 5. The hit that shocked the mob, Cleveland, 1977. The city is a powder keg, and every street, alley, and parking lot is a potential battlefield. Danny Greene has survived bombings, threats, and assassination attempts that would have ended any ordinary man's life. But Greene is no ordinary man. He is calculated, fearless, and unpredictable. The Italian Mafia, led by James "Jack White" Licavoli, grows increasingly desperate. Greene's defiance is an affront to their authority, and every failed attempt to remove him fuels their frustration. They hire seasoned hitmen, armed with bombs, guns, and cunning. Yet Greene's network of loyal men, his knowledge of the city, and his eccentric brilliance allow him to evade almost every strike. One morning, a car bomb is discovered under the vehicle of John Nardi, Greene's ally and former Mafia associate. Nardi escapes, shaken, but alive. Greene inspects the scene with his usual mix of humor and menace. "They'll have to do better than that," he tells his men, a grin on his face. But the escalation is relentless. Assassins refine their tactics, targeting not only Greene but his closest allies. Nardi, once a confidant, becomes a casualty of the war. Outside a Teamster's office in Cleveland, a bomb detonates beneath Nardi's car. The explosion is lethal. Pieces of the vehicle scatter across the parking lot. Nardi is dead. The city trembles at the news. Greene's response is swift and calculated. He knows the Mafia believes his power is diminished, but he refuses to bow. They think they've won, he says to his lieutenants. They're wrong. They just made a mistake they'll live to regret. Greene begins plotting retaliatory strikes. Every ally, every enemy, every Mafia-controlled business becomes a node in a web of strategy. He identifies weaknesses, sets traps, and prepares to hit back harder than ever before. His approach is methodical, almost surgical, but with an undercurrent of unpredictability that keeps even the Mafia off balance. Meanwhile, federal and local authorities intensify surveillance. The FBI installs wiretaps, tracks vehicle movements, and monitors Greene's known associates. Yet despite the scrutiny, Greene moves with confidence. He knows the streets, he knows the men, and he understands the game. The war escalates. Licavoli's faction attempts more car bombs, shooting attacks, and ambushes. Greene counters with carefully planned strikes against Mafia-controlled operations. The violence spreads across Cleveland, targeting businesses, homes, and streets once considered safe. Citizens grow wary, locking doors and avoiding downtown streets after dark. The city is becoming Bomb City, USA, more than ever. Greene's survival against repeated assassination attempts shocks both the Mafia and law enforcement. The Italian leadership begins questioning their strategy. Greene is not just lucky. He is tactical, charismatic, and fearless. His resilience inspires fear among his enemies and loyalty among his followers. Despite the chaos, Greene maintains a public persona that captivates Cleveland. He attends community events, donates to local charities, and maintains his image as a protector of the neighborhood. Newspapers portray him as a folk hero, a man who stood up to organized crime with courage and style. Yet behind the image is a man consumed by strategy, revenge, and the constant knowledge that death is always near. The assassinations, bombings, and retaliatory strikes culminate in a city teetering on the edge. Greene's boldness has forced the Mafia into a reactive stance, a position they have rarely occupied in Cleveland. The balance of power has shifted, but the conflict is far from over. As Greene prepares for the next phase, he fortifies his home, strengthens alliances, and sets traps for those who would dare strike again. He knows that every action has consequences, every enemy carries a threat, and every day could be his last. Yet he moves forward with the confidence of a man who has stared death in the face and laughed. By the end of the chapter, the city of Cleveland has been transformed. Streets are scarred, citizens live in fear, and the Mafia faces a challenge unlike any in its history. Greene has become both legend and target, a man whose defiance has changed the rules of the game and whose enemies are plotting the ultimate strike. Cleveland's underworld is now a war zone, and Danny Greene stands at the center, unbowed, untouchable, and preparing for the confrontation that will define his life and legacy. Chapter 6. A Marked Man. Cleveland, early 1977. The city breathes uneasily. Every street corner, every alley holds the potential for violence. Danny Greene, the Irishman who defied the Mafia, knows he is no longer just a man. He is a symbol, a target, and a legend in the making. Greene's home on Waterloo Road reflects the tension of his life. A modest brick house from the outside, inside it is fortified like a bunker. Reinforced doors, security alarms, hidden compartments, and escape routes are meticulously planned. Greene moves through his home with the confidence of a man who knows every nail, every floorboard, every shadow. Each morning, Greene rises early. He inspects his property, walks the perimeter, and greets loyal lieutenants who serve as both friends and guards. Breakfast is casual, often consisting of eggs, toast, and a strong cup of coffee, but the conversation is always about strategy. Greene discusses the city, the Mafia, and possible threats, plotting contingencies for every possible attack. His eccentricities are legendary. He wears tailored suits even at home, sports an emerald ring on his right hand, and keeps a revolver within reach at all times. He jokes with neighbors, throws barbecues, and donates to local charities, all while maintaining the vigilance of a man who sleeps with one eye open. Greene's network has grown tighter and more sophisticated. Allies from Irish, black, and small independent gangs maintain communication, reporting suspicious activity, monitoring known mafia movements, and ensuring that Greene is never taken by surprise. Yet cracks begin to appear. Some associates, pressured by bribes or threats, consider betraying him. Fear of Licavoli's retribution spreads among men who were once loyal. Greene, ever perceptive, notices subtle shifts. A missed meeting, an unusual route, a lingering look. Every detail matters. Every moment could be a prelude to death. Meanwhile, the mafia hires contract killers to end Greene's life. Two men emerge as central figures in this deadly plot: Ray Ferrito and Ronald Carabia. Ferrito, an experienced mob hitman, is calculating, patient, and ruthless. Carabia, his accomplice, provides local knowledge and logistics. Together, they study Greene's routines, his patterns, his habits, everything that might reveal a weakness. Greene continues to live boldly, almost theatrically, to confuse his enemies. He drives armored cars, varies his routes, and frequently changes meeting locations. He attends public functions, always smiling for the cameras, always maintaining the image of the untouchable Irishman. But beneath the bravado, he is meticulous, calculating, and fully aware that any misstep could be fatal. His home, once a place of refuge, becomes a command center. Greene meets with his lieutenants, devising strategies to protect the family, maintain control of the city's rackets, and counter mafia attacks. He discusses potential assassinations, evaluates intelligence reports, and rehearses emergency protocols. Despite the constant danger, Greene's personality remains magnetic. Men are drawn to him, inspired by his courage and clarity of vision. He mixes street savvy with military discipline, creating an aura that is both charismatic and terrifying. Stories of his defiance spread quickly: how he survived previous attempts on his life, how he outwitted the mafia, how he walked into danger and emerged unscathed. But Licavoli's patience runs thin. The mafia now understands that subtlety and intimidation will not remove Greene. Only a meticulously planned, lethal strike can end him. Ferrito and Carabia are briefed, vehicles and explosives prepared, and surveillance intensified. Every Greene move is tracked, every ally observed. The stage is set. Greene, for his part, senses the increasing danger. He tightens his routines, reinforces his home, and reassures his men. Yet he does not retreat. His confidence is as much a weapon as any gun or bomb. He believes in his survival, in his strategy, and in his ability to outthink his enemies, even when the walls of his city close in around him. The tension is palpable. Cleveland, once bustling with ordinary life, has become a city under siege. Greene, aware of every threat, every eye watching him, prepares for the moment when the mafia's patience will erupt into violence. Every day is a calculated risk. Every interaction is measured. Every shadow could hold an enemy. Greene's life has become a constant balance between boldness and caution, visibility and secrecy, confidence and paranoia. As the plot against him tightens, as Ferrito and Carabia move closer to executing their plan, the Irishman's world narrows to his home, his allies, and his daily routines. Each chore, each conversation, each movement now a potential pivot point between life and death. Danny Greene has survived years of mafia threats, dozens of assassination attempts, and a city at war. But the final act of this deadly drama is approaching, and he knows it. Every step he takes, every meeting he attends, every drive he makes could be the last. Cleveland waits, tense and uncertain, as the Irishman walks through the final days before the explosion that will shock the mafia, the city, and the nation. Chapter 7. October 6, 1977. Cleveland, October 6, 1977. The morning is crisp, the sun low over the east side neighborhoods. Danny Greene wakes in his fortified home on Waterloo Road, performs his usual routines, and greets his lieutenants. Every move is deliberate, as always. He sips coffee, checks the perimeter, and reviews plans for meetings later that day. Greene is fully aware of the stakes. He has survived countless assassination attempts, dozens of car bombs, and the relentless pursuit of the Mafia. But today, he is meeting with associates in the Collinwood office complex, a familiar location, one he believes he can navigate safely. He leaves home in his green Chevrolet Monte Carlo, an unassuming vehicle yet fully armored to his specifications. Unknown to Greene, the Mafia's hitmen have prepared with meticulous precision. Ray Ferrito and Ronald Carabia have rigged the Monte Carlo with explosives, timing the device to detonate when the engine is started. Every wire, every connection, every detail has been calculated for maximum effect. Greene drives confidently through Cleveland streets, unaware that the trap has already been set. The roads, familiar and routine, conceal lethal intent. He parks, exits, and begins walking toward the office. His briefcase in hand, his tie adjusted, and a cigarette dangling from his lips, the Irishman appears unshakable, almost casual. Inside, associates discuss union matters, loans, and street-level operations. Greene smiles, cracks a joke, and moves through the office with characteristic bravado. Outside, the city continues its rhythm. Cars, buses, pedestrians, unaware that a single explosion is about to reshape Cleveland's underworld. Ferrito monitors the Monte Carlo, ensuring every trigger is set. He steps back, his finger on the detonator, heart steady, mind focused. The plan is flawless. All that remains is the ignition. At precisely the calculated moment, Greene approaches the vehicle. He opens the driver's side door, steps in, and starts the engine. The explosion is instantaneous. Flames erupt from the Monte Carlo, engulfing the car in a fireball. Metal twists, glass shatters, and debris sprays across the parking lot. The roar echoes through Collinwood, shaking nearby buildings. The street fills with smoke, panic, and screams. Passers-by duck for cover. Office workers rush to windows, cameras capture the chaos. When the smoke clears, the Irishman's green Monte Carlo is unrecognizable. Danny Greene lies dead inside, his body consumed by the force of the blast. John Nardi's earlier death had been a warning. This final act cements the Mafia's lethal response. Ferrito and Carabia disappear into the shadows, leaving behind the devastation and a chilling message. Defiance will be met with death. Cleveland's underworld absorbs the shock. The city, already accustomed to violence, reels from the sheer audacity of the assassination. Federal and local authorities respond immediately. Police tape cordons off the area. The FBI moves in, documenting evidence, taking witness statements, and attempting to reconstruct the mechanics of the bomb. Observers marvel at the sophistication. The device is professional, precise, and deadly. It leaves little doubt that the Mafia orchestrated it. News spreads quickly. Newspapers run headlines declaring the death of the Irishman. Residents, reporters, and law enforcement alike are stunned. Greene, who had survived so many attempts, now lies dead. His legend, larger than life, becomes permanent. Reactions are mixed. Some mourn a man who, despite his criminality, had become a folk hero. Others see the inevitability of his end. A man who challenged the Mafia, broke the rules, and paid the ultimate price. Yet for the Mafia, the killing is validation, a brutal demonstration of power and control. The city braces for the aftermath. Cleveland streets, already tense, grow even more cautious. Associates of Greene fear for their lives. The FBI intensifies surveillance. Licavoli's family consolidates power, but they know the balance has shifted. The Irishman is gone, but the chaos he created lingers. In death, Danny Greene becomes immortalized. His defiance, charm, and audacity are celebrated in whispers, stories, and headlines. For Cleveland, October 6, 1977, becomes a day that defines the city's era of mob warfare. The explosion ends a life but begins a legend. The Irishman, who navigated the treacherous waters of the Mafia, unions, and federal scrutiny, now rests in history as a symbol of courage, cunning, and rebellion against organized crime. Chapter 8. The Fall of the Cleveland Mob. The explosion that killed Danny Greene on October 6, 1977, reverberates far beyond Collinwood. Cleveland is stunned, the city's residents shaken, and the streets that once tolerated open mafia influence begin to change. Greene's death marks a turning point. The Irishman may be gone, but the wheels of justice and retribution are just beginning to turn. Federal authorities, already monitoring organized crime, intensify their investigations. The FBI zeroes in on the perpetrators of Greene's assassination. Evidence points toward Ray Ferrito and Ronald Carabia, the hitmen responsible for rigging the Monte Carlo with explosives. Surveillance records, witness statements, and forensic analysis confirm what many suspected. The Cleveland Mafia orchestrated Greene's death with precision. The stakes are high. Licavoli's Italian mob, long dominant in Cleveland, had underestimated the consequences of such high-profile violence. Killing Greene brought unprecedented law enforcement attention. The FBI launches a task force focused on dismantling the mob's operations, combining wiretaps, informants, and undercover surveillance. In a twist that would define the downfall of Cleveland's mafia, Ray Ferrito decides to cooperate with federal authorities. Facing potential life imprisonment for his role in Greene's murder, Ferrito flips, agreeing to testify against Licavoli and other key members of the mafia. His cooperation provides prosecutors with unprecedented access to the inner workings of the mob. Details of racketeering, extortion, loan sharking, and murder-for-hire schemes. Licavoli, once untouchable, now faces a relentless legal assault. The FBI, armed with Ferrito's testimony, builds a case that reveals not only the Greene assassination, but a pattern of corruption, intimidation, and violence that had dominated Cleveland for decades. Federal agents compile evidence of car bombings, arsons, and illegal gambling operations, linking them directly to Licavoli's organization. The trials are dramatic. Witnesses testify about Greene's defiance, the mafia's ruthless tactics, and Ferrito's involvement. Prosecutors present a narrative that captures the chaos of the Cleveland mob war, detailing more than 30 bombings in a single year, the murders of Greene and Nardi, and the relentless campaign of terror waged against independent gangs and civilians alike. Licavoli's defense is limited. The weight of Ferrito's testimony, corroborated by physical evidence and law enforcement surveillance, overwhelms the mafia boss's efforts to maintain control. Convictions follow, dismantling the structure that had allowed organized crime to flourish in Cleveland. Long-standing associates are imprisoned or forced into hiding, and the mob's grip on unions, gambling, and rackets is shattered. The impact extends beyond Cleveland. Federal authorities use the Greene case as a model for prosecuting organized crime across the Midwest. The methods, flipping insiders, leveraging witness testimony, and documenting criminal networks, become standard procedure in dismantling mafia operations in other cities. The fall of Licavoli's organization demonstrates that even the most entrenched criminal empires are vulnerable to determined law enforcement. For former associates of Greene, Ferrito's cooperation is a revelation. They recount in interviews how the Irishman's death, though tragic, ultimately exposed the vulnerabilities of the mafia. The fear that once protected the Italian mob is replaced by uncertainty, legal scrutiny, and public condemnation. Cleveland itself bears the scars. Buildings damaged in the bombings are repaired, streets cleared of debris, but the memory of Greene's defiance lingers. Neighborhoods recount stories of the Irishman, a man who lived boldly, fought openly, and refused to submit to intimidation. Children growing up in the 1980s hear legends of car bombs and daring escapes, stories that blur the line between myth and reality. Licavoli and his inner circle are convicted on multiple charges, including murder, conspiracy, and racketeering. The trials mark the end of an era for Cleveland's mafia, signaling that unchecked power, intimidation, and violence have consequences. Law enforcement emerges victorious, demonstrating the effectiveness of strategy, patience, and the willingness of insiders like Ferrito to come forward. In the aftermath, former associates reflect on Greene's legacy. His life, though violent, catalyzed a transformation in Cleveland's criminal landscape. By resisting the mafia, Greene inadvertently paved the way for law enforcement to dismantle an organization that had thrived in secrecy for decades. Cleveland is quieter. The bombings cease. The fear that gripped neighborhoods diminishes. But the legend of Danny Greene endures, a man whose courage, audacity, and strategic brilliance reshaped organized crime in the Midwest forever. The Irishman may have died in an explosion, but his life ignited a chain of events that ended the dominance of the Cleveland Mafia. The streets that once trembled under Mafia rule now breathe with cautious freedom, and the FBI's victory sets a precedent for cities across America. For Greene, the end is only the beginning of his legacy. His defiance, his cunning, and his willingness to challenge the Mafia mark him as a symbol of resistance, a man whose story continues to captivate historians, filmmakers, and true crime enthusiasts alike. Chapter 9. The Legend of the Irishman. Danny Greene is dead. Yet in Cleveland, and in the broader world of organized crime, his presence is still felt. Stories circulate of the Irishman who outwitted the Mafia, survived dozens of assassination attempts, and stood defiant against the city's most powerful criminal organization. He has become more than a man. He is a legend. The Irish-American community remembers Greene not merely as a criminal, but as a protector and a symbol of defiance. On the east side of Cleveland, families speak in hushed tones about how he gave money to the poor, supported local businesses, and maintained loyalty among those who worked for him. To many, Greene is a Robin Hood figure, a man who demanded respect, commanded fear, and, in his own way, looked after his own. Media fascination amplifies the myth. Newspapers run stories detailing the 36 bombings, the failed assassinations, and the audacity of Greene's life. Television crews interview former associates, neighbors, and law enforcement officials, each adding layers to the story. Headlines refer to Bomb City, USA, and depict Greene as a man larger than life, a folk hero who dared to stand against organized crime. Pop culture soon seizes the narrative. Greene's exploits inspire books, documentaries, and eventually the 2011 feature film Kill the Irishman. The dramatization captures the tension, humor, and audacity of Greene's life, blending fact and legend for audiences eager to witness the high-stakes world of Cleveland's mob wars. Yet, amid the entertainment, historians and journalists stress the reality. Greene's life was violent, dangerous, and brutally consequential. He was a man who played with death, and for a time, survived against impossible odds. The legend of the Irishman also reshapes how the Mafia operates in Cleveland and the Midwest. Licavoli's downfall demonstrates that even the most entrenched criminal organizations are vulnerable when insiders flip, law enforcement pressures intensify, and the public refuses to be intimidated. Greene's life, death, and the ensuing prosecutions create a blueprint for dismantling organized crime elsewhere. Former associates reflect on Greene with a mix of awe and fear. They recount stories of his cleverness, how he outmaneuvered rivals, maintained loyalty, and prepared for every contingency. His ability to inspire loyalty among diverse groups of people, Irish, Black, and independent gangs, stands out as one of his defining traits. Yet legend is never entirely accurate. The man behind the myth was also ruthless, unpredictable, and violent. Greene's methods included extortion, threats, and intimidation. Businesses paid for protection. Lives were endangered. The line between heroism and criminality blurred, creating a complex portrait of a man who lived on his own terms. Greene's death did not end his influence. Law enforcement agencies study his tactics, the Mafia studies his mistakes, and true crime enthusiasts dissect every maneuver. His life story serves as a lesson in strategy, audacity, and the consequences of defiance. For historians, Greene embodies the volatile intersection of ethnicity, organized crime, and urban power struggles in 20th century America. The Irishman becomes a cultural touchstone. Songs, stories, and films reference him. Locals in Cleveland remember the streets that shook under car bombs, the fear that gripped neighborhoods, and the audacity of a man who refused to yield. Greene's life is invoked as both warning and inspiration, a lesson in courage, intelligence, and the high cost of rebellion. Even decades later, scholars examine the societal implications of Greene's war with the Mafia. His resistance challenged the Italian-American criminal hierarchy, created opportunities for law enforcement to intervene, and shifted public perception of organized crime. The narrative of the Irishman demonstrates how a single individual, operating outside conventional power structures, can provoke dramatic change. As the city heals, the stories endure. Residents recount Greene's daring exploits, the chaos of bombings, and the inevitable violence that came with challenging the mafia. He becomes a symbol of defiance, a figure whose life reminds Cleveland, and the nation, that standing against organized crime comes with both legend and consequence. In death, Danny Greene's legend grows, capturing the imagination of new generations. The streets may have quieted, but the echoes of his defiance remain. He is remembered as a man who dared to defy the mafia, whose audacity brought an empire to its knees, and whose life, violent, chaotic, and extraordinary, became immortal. Cleveland will forever remember Danny Greene, the Irishman who turned the city into a battleground, survived impossible odds, and left a legacy that continues to captivate historians, filmmakers, and true crime enthusiasts alike. Epilogue. The city that remembered the explosions, Cleveland, the late 1970s. The smoke from car bombs has cleared, the streets have been repaired, and daily life slowly returns to a semblance of normalcy. Yet the scars of the Irishman's war remain etched into the city, in the cracked sidewalks, the stories of terrified residents, and the collective memory of a community that witnessed unprecedented violence. The Cleveland mob war left a permanent mark. Over 30 car bombings in just a year created a climate of fear, forcing both residents and law enforcement to confront the reality of organized crime in a city that had long tolerated it. Families moved cautiously through neighborhoods, business owners installed reinforced doors and alarms, and the local media covered every explosion with a mixture of fear and fascination. Danny Greene's death, violent and dramatic, symbolized both the limits of defiance and the power of audacity. His legacy was paradoxical, a man who was criminal, violent, and ruthless, yet also charitable, charismatic, and strategically brilliant. In death, he became a touchstone for understanding how organized crime operated and how it could be challenged. The FBI leveraged the chaos of Greene's war to make historic gains against the Cleveland Mafia. Using the testimony of Ray Ferrito and other insiders, federal authorities dismantled Licavoli's operations, exposing corruption, extortion, and murder-for-hire plots. The investigation and subsequent prosecution served as a blueprint for tackling organized crime nationwide, demonstrating the effectiveness of flipping insiders, meticulous surveillance, and coordinated legal action. Cleveland itself learned from the Irishman's war. The city became a case study in the dangers of unchecked gang violence, the limits of mafia dominance, and the ways law enforcement can respond when crime infiltrates political, labor, and business networks. Urban planners, historians, and law enforcement officers would cite Greene's war as a turning point in Cleveland's mid-20th century history. Yet the legend of Danny Greene persisted far beyond his death. Neighborhoods whispered tales of his cleverness, daring escapes, and willingness to challenge the mafia directly. Local children grew up hearing the story of the Irishman who survived car bombs and assassins, creating a folklore that blurred the lines between fact and myth. His life became a lens through which the city examined courage, loyalty, and the price of defiance. Cultural memory kept Greene alive. Newspapers, documentaries, books, and films chronicled his exploits. Kill the Irishman, released decades later, introduced new audiences to his story, dramatizing his life while highlighting the complex realities of Cleveland's mob wars. The city itself became a character in these retellings, the industrial streets, the union halls, and the neighborhoods where loyalties shifted as frequently as alliances in Greene's war. Greene's influence also reshaped organized crime in the Midwest. The Italian Mafia, weakened by federal prosecutions and internal betrayals, learned that power is fragile. Independent gangs, emboldened by Greene's resistance, realized they could operate outside mafia control, although never without risk. Law enforcement agencies refined their approaches to surveillance, wiretapping, and insider cooperation, creating strategies that would dismantle organized crime networks across the country. Even decades later, Cleveland commemorates the era. Residents recall the explosions, the uncertainty, and the tension that once gripped the city. The Irishman's name evokes admiration, fear, and fascination, a reminder of the extraordinary consequences that follow when one man refuses to submit to the entrenched power of organized crime. Historians and criminologists reflect on Greene's story as a study in audacity and consequence. His life illustrates how individual ambition, courage, and strategy can disrupt entrenched criminal systems, but also how the cost of defiance can be fatal. Greene's war transformed Cleveland, reshaped law enforcement tactics, and left a legacy that continues to influence both popular culture and scholarly analysis of organized crime. Ultimately, the city remembers not only the explosions, the deaths, and the destruction, but also the story of a man who became larger than life. Danny Greene's defiance, strategic brilliance, and charisma left an indelible mark on Cleveland, proving that even the most entrenched power structures can be challenged, though sometimes at a devastating price. Cleveland, the city that once trembled under the sound of car bombs, now stands as a testament to resilience, memory, and the extraordinary tale of the Irishman who dared to defy the Mafia. The streets may have healed, but the legend endures, a reminder of courage, consequence, and the explosive price of defiance.